So we are moving on to our next session, which is the context-setting plenary of the summit, titled 3 Decades of Self-Help Groups, From Inclusion to Empowerment. Please bear with us while our team is also setting up the stage simultaneously. This session will focus on many such achievements of the 3 decades of SHG bank linkage program, issues and challenges encountered, and the way forward for the SHGs and the SHG federations. The issue of graduation of clients from group-based microcredit to larger individual enterprise business loans will also be discussed, models for which are being tested and need to be scaled soon for real outcomes of access to finance on incomes of women. So it's a very topical discussion. May I once again request members of the audience who are not seated to please kindly take your seats. We are ready to start with the context-setting plenary. I take the pleasure of requesting the esteemed moderator of this session, Mr. N. Srinivasan, independent consultant, to please join us on stage. Let's welcome him with a round of applause. The esteemed speakers for this session are Padma Shri, Aloysius Fernandez, Member Secretary, Myrada, Ms. Smita Premchandar, Secretary, Sampark, and Mr. Amarjeet Sinha, retired IS officer. A very, very warm and hearty welcome to you all. May I request you all to please join us on stage. Amongst our esteemed panelists, of course, is Mr. Amarjeet Sinha. A very special welcome to our special guest. He is former Secretary, Department of Rural Development and advisor in PMO, and currently is posted as member, Public Enterprise Selection Board. Earlier was posted as advisor to the Prime Minister of India till 2021. With 40 years of experience in government, he played a distinct role in designing of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, National Rural Health Mission, and in bringing governance reforms in programs focusing on livelihoods, employment, housing, social security, skills, urban development, and road construction, amongst others. So a very warm welcome to all our esteemed panelists and the guests. With that, I hand it over to the moderator of this session, Mr. N. Srinivasan. It's over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. And looking to the numbers in the hall, we shouldn't come to a hasty conclusion that women are not a priority. Or community-based financial inclusion is not a priority to us. I think those who are here represent the rest of us quite capably. With that, let me start. This is a fairly long period of history, which we want to compact in about an hour's time. But with the experience that is there here on the stage, there is an innovator, Al, who started all these chain of events with a small group and which has finally become a movement today. And there is a large-scale developer, Dr. Sinha, Amarjeet Sinha, who had taken it upon himself, along with several other, predecessors, successors to him in a very relevant place in the government to take it up. And there is an evaluator who puts in observations which make the, the groups not lose direction, the movement not go astray. So we have got in a way the Trimurtis here to say so. And so my job is to be only a light touch moderator, put a few questions and let the, insights be shared, let the information flow to all of us. I was fortunate that I and along with another author, we were putting together a document on 35 years of SHGs. We hope that it will see the, not the light of the day, light of a conference sometime when it is released next month. So let me delve into that to just give a 1-minute brief. Across the country, we are talking about a number of people, especially women, who have been linked through this system. The numbers, as we see by end of last March, we have got about 161 million households. If you look at one member represents a household, one member of a self-help group. So this is what the number is. When you look at as a proportion of population, if more than 10% of population of the country gets represented in a mass movement, which requires exacting discipline of several kinds, and that too, focus mostly on women. Because of the 13.4 million group that are there, more than 11.4 million are women. Of course, we have added quite a number of structures which are community-based, which are mostly democratic in most locations. And the fact that this has been moving along with several people claiming ownership for success and a few also subscribing to its failure in small pockets. Overall, it is a movement which has been so totally mass-based, driven by NGOs, driven by other organizations, driven by the government, driven by parastatal societies, and giving space for a lot of us, whether it is Smita or myself, to look into what's happening there and then provide a narrative, whether it makes sense or not. At times it does, at times it does not. But then it has been a powerful journey for women to get something that they were not easily able to get. So what I will do now is to maybe pose a few questions. I got some specific things to ask each of them, but I'm leaving it to them to talk about from their experience and from their past expertise, how this movement has panned out to be. I think I will start with the innovator, Al. You started off all this mischief 35 years back. My question is, did you ever think when NABARD gave you this 500 SHGs as a pilot project, that this will be something like this today? And what do you think enabled this to happen?
What enabled this to happen? I'll come to that. But I'm just very happy to be in this esteemed colleague. Srinivasan is one go-to man for all the problems in the microfinance sector. Like Ganesh, Ganpati, he removes all the problems. So you are the Ganesh of the microfinance sector. And Amarjit, you have been such a champion in the government. One of the reasons why the self-help group moved far, it came up in my radar, yes, because when our cooperative societies broke down, and I can tell you that story later, but it became national because of champions in the government, like Dr. Rangarajan, who said that the self-help groups need not be registered to get loans, and P.R. Naik, who was chairman of NABARD and also Deputy Governor of RBI. So, Amarjit, you have been a champion in the government. And also, after that, you have written books which have been very helpful. Thank you. And of course, this lady here, she is the Wonder Woman. She is now going to summarize this entire workshop. Oh, I really congratulate you on that one. Please give her a hand. And next time, don't come for the workshop, just come for the summary. I think that would... Okay. Now, I've been these 20 years, I think, through this excellent parade. And this, when we started, it was financial inclusion. Now it has become inclusive finance and various combinations. But these two words have been tossed around. But I like it. But in the process, I think we have come up with a little problem. And that is the target of financial inclusion was those who were left out of the process of finance completely. So these were people who came in this audience in the first 5 years, were those who were involved in bringing people into the financial system. Now that is no longer true. The people who are here today are really addressing people who have been brought into the financial system. And therefore, they're still vulnerable. It's not that they're not. They're still vulnerable. And the fact that they've got a bank account doesn't mean that they are in the financial system. So they need help. They need support. They need no doubt about it. All of you are very relevant. But we have to realize that there are two categories of people. There may be 45% women in the self-help groups, but there are also 55% outside the self-help groups, for my rights. Now the question is, so what is important is the strategies. And I think we have to be very clear on this. The strategy for bringing people, that 55 million, into the group is not the same as the strategies for the 45 million who are in the group. And that clarity is necessary. The self-help group was a very good strategy for bringing those outside into the system. It needed empowerment, and it was built on institutions. It was a self-help. They saved, and they used their money internally lending, and then the bank came into the picture, thanks to Rangarajan and all that. But once you are in the system, even though you may not take a loan, the way to support you to grow is totally different. You need not need the self-help groups. You need all you guys sitting around and the challenges that you face. So I can elaborate on that. But I'll just mention, I have certain beliefs and certain insights. I'm not certain which are the beliefs, which are the insights. I'm confused, and when you're confused, give a talk. So that's what I'm doing. Now, my belief on why the self-help groups arose was, I had two beliefs. One is, I said people have strengths. All our theory when I studied development was needs, the problem tree. If you work on people's needs, they will always be dependent on you. Work on people's strengths. People can save, people can meet, people can discuss. You need to give them an opportunity. That is why the self-help group promoted. Build on people's strengths and build institutions. I think it's very easy to destroy. Building an institution, my brother's motto is building poor people. Today there are self-help groups which are 30 years old and running on their own. They don't need banks, they don't need NGOs. They're running on their own. Because we invested in institutional building. So that's one reason. The other, and it was based on affinity. We did not select poor people. We asked them to form their own groups. They self-selected the groups. And the biggest strength of this country is affinity among people. The legal system in America has destroyed it. But we have tremendous affinity, relations of trust, relations of support. If you compare disasters in India, how people have supported themselves. And that's the traditional strength of this country, which unfortunately we are losing. But that was the base, the strength on which Mairada built. And the beauty of it was recognized. So my few comments on the second category, which I think you can raise if you like. Point one, they are insights. My request is, I have great respect for what's happening today. My only issue is make a profit. Don't profit here. Don't maximize profit. If you're serious about development. I know very big banks who started compulsory savings in the 95, which meant they cut some money before they gave the loan. By 2005, their entire portfolio was funded by the loan that they had, by the compulsory savings. And you are saying the poor have pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. Of course they have done. And pulled the organization also by the bootstraps. So, don't maximize profit. Go beyond financial inclusion or inclusive finance to inclusion and growth. I think, I may laugh, yesterday, some of the people who are here, I have a phone ring, which is a bleat of a goat, meh, meh. And that I got during our IRDP days. You know IRDP? We look, IRDP had problems, subsidies, this. But they had one thing. They didn't only give money, they gave an asset also. So that, remember that. So there was some sense in that issue. So I've removed that now, just. So and how do you do this? People require support to get loans. I was just talking to SBI, who was here. He says, so much of corruption is required to get the papers required for loans. He has dispensed with all of them. Fantastic. Suvidya something. But I'm also looking at after you give the loan. After we give a loan, and today we are giving loans at 2 lakhs and a half. Are we really serious in helping people to use that loan effectively? Do we provide skills? Do we upgrade their skills? Do we provide technology? Our entire focus is prior to the loan. How much is it after the loan? Don't we have a responsibility? So as a result of this, I find all the seminars I attend are focused on improving the efficiencies of the lending organization. How many seminars have I attended where we are focusing on improving the efficiencies of the client? So I think we need to look at this. The next thing is, and this we can do with our CSR funds. We are doing it. It can be done in a big way. Entire focus on improving the efficiencies of lending. Okay, and all this is helping digital public infrastructure and all that is available. Fantastic tools. Use them. But don't forget to improve the efficiencies of those people. What about investing? Okay. Now, the next problem is high interest rates. When the direct SSG bank linkage loan program was working, banks were lending at 11%, 10%. Today, they are lending to me, and I'm lending at 20%. Now, that's fine, but as far as we are going for loans on cottage industries now, it's not viable. 20% loan is not viable. I can get a loan at 10%. The people I'm lending to can't get a loan less than 20%, 25%, 22%. How do you run a cottage industry at that rate? I had suggested that we do something like Bangladesh did. We can follow something of Bangladesh also, not everything, but at least this. They have a separate fund constituted, a special purpose fund, a window, where an institution that provides at cheap rates. After all, NABARD is lending to its subsidiary. I was the chairman of NABARD Financial Services, the founding chairman. I was getting loans from NABARD at 8%. Why can't we do this for others? So, just let's have a look at interest rates. Just this last point, whole issue of unsecured loans. The big issue today, RBI is worried, I am worried, any finance man, and I'm an economist, basically, we'll all be worried about this. And I find all the economists are very happy, but all the development fellows are wondering what the hell is happening. Now, unsecured loans, to my mind, if you increase the weightage of unsecured loans, you increase the interest rate down the line. Now, when I look at what are unsecured loans, they are they have growth increased tremendous, about 30%. But it's largely a credit card. We are getting into the American style of life. But you have included priority sector loans under this. So unsecured loans are not only credit card loans for buying but there are a few exempted, of course, like vehicles and all, but they're also applied to microfinance loans. So the pressure in interest rates is going to rise. Now, I think I've written to RBI and all saying, please make this distinction. The priority sector has disappeared. You have shifted the entire priority sector to the private sector, not entire, but quite a lot of it, to the private sector. It's operating effectively. People are taking loans. But I think just like we should not maximize profits, let the financing institutions also not maximize pressure. Thank you.
Thanks, Al. I think the point that people don't just require money, they require something more than that. Can we use CSR funds also? You are saying people require more than money. So for that, can we also functionally use CSR funds and the whole issue of interest rates? I turn to you, Mr. Sinha, now. Now, he has laid down quite a number of what you call markers on the ground. Roughly around 10 years back, I think the government thought it will scale up this program in a massive way. After it took up, it did several things, bringing in people's institutions based on some learnings from maybe Andhra Pradesh, some from Bihar. And you look at the amount of loans, the average loans outstanding, even the extent of savings, and the stated information on the high recovery rates that are there, they seem to be quite stupendous. When you look at it now, What do you feel? How important it was for the government to have taken it over 10 years back, when it looked like it was primarily a voluntary kind of a program, which has its own energy based on some stimulus we give on the ground, and how satisfied you are with it now?
Oh, thank you, Srinivasan. And thanks to the organizers for putting me in a panel where the person to my left is the person whose articles we read. He's contributed a beautiful piece for those of you who have not seen. I've brought the book with me. The book is called Anchoring Change, 75 years of grassroots interventions that made a difference. Aloysius has done an excellent paper on Mairada and its role in the emergence of the self-help groups. I salute you for this work. This really laid the foundation, and there's a complete description of it. I knew that Madam Prem Chandar is a very distinguished scholar, but I didn't know that she's the daughter-in-law of somebody whom we all respect a lot, a civil servant who's no more, Mr. P.S. Appu, who belonged to the Bihar cadre. I didn't have an opportunity to serve directly with him, but it was a delight for somebody from Bangalore, he and his wife. He wrote me an inland letter. I was posted as Director Education. Amarjit, I want to see if Bihar has changed at all. This is decades after he had retired. Husband and wife, second class, 3-tier, traveling from Bangalore to find out whether anything had changed in Bihar. That was the commitment he had. So it's really a pleasure, ma'am, to have met you today. Friends, the subject is difficult to put on a 5-minute capsule. So I'll just take the salient aspects. Clearly, I'll begin by saying the Rural Livelihood Mission, the National Rural Livelihood Mission, is an example of the absolutely outstanding role that governments can play to take things to scale without losing the community connect and the professionalism. Now that's a big statement to make. I must back it with adequate facts. What makes me say that? You show me an credit product, very distinguished financial experts are here, where over the last 11 years, you've lent 7,71,000 crores. 7,71,000 crores to about 40% of the 100 million women who are a part of the livelihood mission today. And what is your non-performing asset? 1.72%. 1.72% for SHGs of under the National Rural Livelihood Mission. I'm not talking about defaults in the past. I'm just talking about those. Why is it so? Something right must be happening that people whom we thought cannot be trusted with resources, they have nothing to pay back with. Dr. Rangarajan, P.V. Nayak, Aloysius, they took a very calculated risk, I'd say, when they declared 1996, the final RBI circular, that lending to SHGs without collaterals, up to 10 lakhs. That was a big thing at that time, because the financing industry never recognized these players who had no mortgages to offer, who had no collaterals to offer. That trust has paid. Why has it paid? It's not like any other program. The structures, the institutions, the professionalism, the capacity building, each and every process, it's not a program which had to depend on flying in consultants to make the program grow. It was the foot soldiers of the program that have made the difference. Who are the foot soldiers? The foot soldiers are about 400,000 to 500,000 women today, whom we refer to as community resource persons, who have themselves been poor at one point of time, but they've come out of poverty. It is these women who drive the enthusiasm of the livelihood mission. It is these 400,000 to 500,000 women today who make the difference. There are instances, large-scale instances, of women from Andhra Pradesh living in Arunachal for 6 months, forming self-help groups. women from Kerala living in Meghalaya for 6 months to form self-help groups. Women from my own home state of Bihar. One program where we take pride and keep our collars up in Bihar is the Jivika program. The Women's Self-Help Group program under the Livelihood Mission in Bihar. Women from Bihar have gone to Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan to form groups there. We also have professionals. And these are all, mind you, women who came out of poverty. That's where the strength lies. We did not begin with a solution. We began with the problem. And best illustration of this today, we have 118,000 banking correspondents whom we call banking correspondent Sakhis. They are from the National Rural Livelihood Mission. Who are these women? These women are semi-literate, barely literate, but willing to provide financial services at households of people, willing to provide pension to a 94-year-old widow on her deathbed. Technology enables it, but technology alone couldn't have done that. I recall still the first visit to the Department of Financial Services when we said that we want to make our livelihood mission women banking correspondents. The reply, I have it with me, oh, we've done it all. It's already there everywhere on a 1% model. There's a commercial 1% model. Unfortunately, that 1% model never recognized that more than 45% of India is small habitations where in a day you'll do business of, say, a few hundred rupees. If I am actually very conscientious and do my duty, on a 1% model, I'll make losses each time I go to disburse. It worked because it was these community resource persons who were there. The bank Sakhis in rural branches. Why is the recovery so good? Very simple mechanism. It's called the community-based recovery mechanism. Women from SHGs, states like Bihar, West Bengal, Orissa, every 2 weeks, they go to the bank, a few of them. The bank manager points out which are the loans which are overdue. They get them paid. They, in turn, go with detailed micro-credit plans. Of the 7,71,000 crores, not 1 rupee was lent without a detailed micro-credit plan pointing out what is the strength, what are the assets, what are the current debts, what are the potential and possibilities of doing business. So friends, it's been a very hard work. The states have led it. We must, the one major strength, the federal principle that we talk of, is nowhere as articulate as it is when it comes to the women's self-help groups in India, the Kudumsri in Kerala, the TNSRLM in Tamil Nadu, the Jivika movement in Bihar, different regions of the country, different systems of doing work, and more importantly, what has to be recognized is the fact that the participation and ownership by states, Mission Shakti in Odisha, different names, but the same processes. So the federal principle demands that we have a role beyond just, and that it is that partnership which makes a difference. A program which provided for adequate number of professionals. You want to do sustainable agriculture, bring in Krishi Sakhi. What are these Krishi Sakhis, Pashu Sakhis and all? They are there to facilitate incomes of households. They are there to handhold. Things don't happen by themselves. Technology is not an end in itself. It's only a means. If I don't have people who can handhold there, we need more professionals in rural areas. Yes, evaluations by the Stanford University, by IRMA, have indicated it takes time, 6 to 8 years. We have to have the patience. If we don't have the patience, we'll lose the game. Of the 100 million women, only 40 million are as yet linked to credit from banks. No problem. Let it take 6 to 8 years, unless they strengthen and become stronger. And especially on livelihood, some of the movement forward is very promising. Just one micro example. We have our Bundelkhand in Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh area. 6 districts of Bundelkhand in the UP side. Women's SHGs were strong in the livelihood mission. They chose to set up a producer company for milk. 2018 it was registered. And do you know what is the total revenues they have made? They are now spread out among 68,000 women there are part of this particular producer company for milk. They have made crores of revenues just by selling milk. They were doing earlier also, but today they don't need any support. The mission provides them HR support for 3 to 5 years. They don't need any government money now. So it is some of these micro processes that I'm going into. And the financial inclusion is not only about opening bank accounts. 70% of the women in the movement have an accident insurance and a life insurance. A large number have the Atal Pension Yojana. So a lot of the other financial products have also gone hand in hand with this process. Sorry to have exceeded. You've made me speak on a passion which is a lifelong one, difficult to contain myself.
Actually, the passion is reflected in how you express this. So, thank you so much. That much long after your legitimate role in government went off, still the passion remained, which means you are driving things like writing new books on this. So, Smita, you have heard both of them. So he says, yes, when you do institutions which are built on community, you should have patience, and women can do. This when NAL and NABARD, they got into the partnership and did in the early days, this was meant to be a financial, more a credit inclusion program, which starts off with savings inclusion in the beginning. Subsequently, when government took over, we said, okay, we are going to add a huge content of livelihoods. Now, a combination of these two, we are positioning this as an empowerment program that women are getting empowered. How do you look at the narrative, and are we able to empower all these women? What is the scale? How would you judge what happens the way we present it now?
Thank you. So as you can imagine, and you can see, we are here in a mutual admiration society. And, I mean, when I entered the development world and went to Bangalore and I started working in Karnataka, of course, the first person I went to was Al, and he may not remember, but once I was, and so whenever I had problems or something, I would phone him or somehow find an appointment with him or find him in a conference. And once I told him, I said, you know, we are doing 3 or 4 programs with the government, and all the time, the last 25% of the money doesn't come. And he just said, Smita, I'll tell you one thing. Work with the government, but not with their money. Raise the money somewhere else, partner them, and be a resource person to them, teach them something, never, never depend on their money, raise the funds outside. And such nuggets is what I have had from Al over the years, and thanks, Al, for this. You did ask me whether SHGs, how do they empower women? Actually, SHGs, self-help groups, is an external concept. It's not a social concept in India. Women don't come together every week, sit down, save 10 rupees, 20 rupees, 50 rupees, 100 rupees. It's something that we brought from the outside and planted in the village, right? Because we wanted to build financial capital from social capital that already existed, the concept of affinity, right? It did 2 things. One is, of course, it brought them together. It did create solidarity. It did bring financial capital to them. It brought savings. They didn't know what to do with this animal because they knew what personal money is. They didn't know what pooled money is. This was a new money. They didn't know what to do with it. And they needed to learn that, because every time in the initial years we went to the villages and we asked, how much is your saving in the group? She would say 1,200 rupees. What, 1,200 rupees? And then she would say, that's my saving, right? So it took them some years to tell you what is the group saving. That it's 10 of us and it's 12,000, that came after many years, because that's when they started learning the concept. So basically, they learned savings. They learned, of course, decision-making, because they had to then learn how to give the loans to each other. Even today, what we don't talk about, but it's true, is that women's lending from their own money is returned at a very different rate and a very different way from money they borrow from quote-unquote companies. Company का पैसा है ना दीदी देना है वापस. Every week, every 15 days, we have to give back. And then why aren't you returning money from your own savings in the same discipline? They're saying नहीं नहीं वो तो अपना पैसा है दीदी अभी ज़रूरत है तो हम रखेंगे. We'll return it later, right? So even today, the women differentiate between own money and external money. And they are sophisticated enough to say, we will pay, 24% on the self-help group loan, and that is what we will keep. From the bank, we will get at 12%, so we'll earn 12%. And from the microfinance company, we'll get at 18 or 20 or whatever, and we'll earn 4%, right? So they know how to do this, whether we recognize or not, yeah? So that's also empowerment. And there is a lot of virtue in solidarity, because they didn't talk about violence. Even today, domestic violence is a very difficult issue to talk about. But when you sit week after week talking to women who were already your friends, and now you start talking about new things, and after you do the, paisa de, paisa le sort of business, you still talk about social things. And at least NGO groups, they do make them talk about and teach them to talk about social issues. The man knows that the curtain on the household has been raised, that he cannot do anything inside now that she will not be able to tell others. So things change slowly when the curtain on the household goes up, but violence against women is something women have learned to deal with. So these are all the good things. Yeah, I would say there are also, the whole concept of SHG was why? Why did we start SHGs? Because financial institutions did not have an oversight on what's happening in the household. How poor is a household? How risky is a household? Now, if she brings in 20 rupees or 50 rupees every week regularly, then she's disciplined, then her household can bear this, and so she's less risky to give a loan, right? In the NGOs, we have a different perspective. If women are not bringing in, if the husband is migrating, if she's migrating, if they're not able to keep savings discipline, then she's more vulnerable. Can we attend to her more? So the financial logic and the empowerment logic are different, yeah? And the other thing is that when you open your accounts to the financial gaze, you're giving financial institutions a view of your household. That's positive and that's negative. It's brought finances to rural poor in a big way, yes, sure. But the Foucauldian gaze has also helped to discipline women, right? This industry, the entire microfinance industry, is sitting on the shoulders of women. Call, 130 million group men for a weekly meeting, save 100 rupees. Do you think people will come? No man will come, right? When the matching grant scheme was there, which was pre-SHG, men used to come, farmer groups used to be there. I remember in Action Aid and so on, we had so many matching grant schemes. If the farmers group came and they were told there would be a matching grant, 20 farmers would collect, pool in 1,000 rupees. The Action Aid would give a grant of 20,000 rupees. They would divide it, they would go home, and then meet in the next season when another matching grant was to be given. We have never demanded from men time contribution free, accounts free, repayment discipline. We've neither demanded money nor discipline from men. So I think there is also a feminization of this field, which we must recognize. And these are contradictory things, but they are true. You discipline them, and then you bring them into the mainstream sector. And then, of course, being mainstream then helps you. So I'll stop here, because I think, I've explained both sides of the empowerment plus the instrumentalization. Thank you.
Thank you, Smita. So you are saying there is still some distance to go. When we talk about empowerment, yeah, we have met other needs. their need for space, their need for being competent financially, bring some voice in the family because they bring some amount of financial resources and security. But we do, before we say it's a women empowerment program, there is some distance to go. See that? I think I will now get back to you to continue from something you said earlier. Several NGOs were there in the space in the first 10, 15 years. Even the work that was done in the early mover states, it was still help the state governments, their own projects with the World Bank or with UNDP. They were all helped by NGO sector at that time. Do you now see the position we are in? Last about 10 years, the voluntary sector involvement is slightly low because the government itself became an NGO. If you look at states like, say, Andhra Pradesh or Bihar or, for example, Kerala right from the beginning, the government became an NGO of a sort which actually accompanied people. But now when we look at the amount of money that goes in, and the point that you made, it's just not the money, the accompanying, hand-holding, the services, the support, which NRLB is trying to do in some places, especially when people come from group member mode to individual entrepreneur mode. You think there is a role that is getting revived? Not just NGOs, meaning competent NGOs which can facilitate this process. How do you look at the engagement? Do you see a role for NGOs today? Role for NGOs. Role. Today.
Okay, that's a $100 million question. Yeah, I think there are those 55% people outside the system are precisely what the NGO should look at. That's exactly what the NGO should look at. I was talking to SPI just now. They can't do everything, they said. For example, the SPI cannot really provide support for post-loan skills and provision of. Just like that, if you want to really bring these people in, you need self-help groups. And to form self-help groups, you need NGOs. The problem is today, there's no money for it. Tamil Nadu was the first state that involved NGOs in the formation of groups. And then it went to other states. And nobody knows, but the first loan to the first self-help group was given by Vaishya Bank, Ramesh Gelli, in Karnataka. Now, so I really don't know what is the future. It's very difficult. And the other thing is just like unsecured loans includes different categories from credit card to priority sector. This word NGOs is also like God, or participation. It includes a wide variety of people from everybody who's not a GO is an NGO. Now, that is a pretty, and it really is a UN word, NGO. We use the word voluntary organization. And we define them as organizations getting professional people, you see, but who have paid salaries, but lower than what the market rate was given. That's how Pradhan and all we started. The sixth plan spoke about, I shouldn't talk about plans, but anyhow, 7 plans spoke about professionalizing them. That's how Pradhan started. But the point is that the funds are not available for this. Now take NABARD. NABARD used to provide a lot of funds to NGOs precisely for including people. That's not there any longer. So I suppose there are phases in all this. Time will come, time will pass. And I've lived long enough to find that everything works in a cycle. And I look forward to new, with hope. And
Thanks, Shal. I think I will follow up that question with you, but apart from that, meaning when government took on this was just a financial inclusion program till then. You somehow start a group, make them a bit experienced, make them slightly financially competent, link them with a bank loan. But when government took it, they added one L. It's not a national or rural mission, it became a livelihood mission. So looking back today, how do you think this livelihoods piece has progressed? And you think it has reached a space where we should be happy, or there is still some more to do? And also, if you can follow up on what Al was saying, do you see there is a role now, or how it is?
No, thank you, Al. And very clearly, rural livelihood mission would not have been what it is if the civil society organizations did not have a major role in the capacity building under the program. The manner in which the mission has institutionalized civil society partnerships is also quite unique. Many of you would be aware about the National Resource Organization Arrangement, the NRO. Now, Pradhan is a large NGO. Pradhan is also one of the NROs. What does it mean? If an organization has found to be good enough on capacity building capabilities to extend support to states, once declared a national resource organization, state rural livelihood missions can get into partnerships with them. It actually takes the range of work that Pradhan was doing many exponentially upwards. So this is similarly the Kudumsri and its community processes. They have stood the test of time. The Kudumsri started a lot of very interesting work around enterprises. When we started the Startup Village Entrepreneurship Program, whoever are institutions or NROs, Kudumsri is the organization, along with Entrepreneurship Development Institute, which actually created a new cadre of community resource persons called the CRP for Enterprise, a community resource person for enterprise. Likewise, the milk experiment that I mentioned to you about producer companies, NDDB does cooperatives, but NDDB services does producer companies. Our milk producer companies, the technical partnership is with NDDB services. The HR support, all the other support we extend goes through the technical partner. So there's a larger role and an opportunity for NGOs to influence on a much larger scale when you work with governments because the canvas is much larger. So I think minus that, the strength and the rollout will have challenges. The second point, even though out of the 200 million households in rural India, the program has reached 100 million households. Interestingly, the expansion in states like Bihar, Jharkhand, Orissa, Assam, it has begun from the bottom of the pyramid. Primarily because in many states, in Bihar, for example, the livelihood mission, the Jivika movement, gathered from the strengths of the Mahila Samakhya program in Bihar. A lot of the leaders of Mahila Samakhya became the frontline leaders of Jivika. And that explains why coverage of vulnerable groups was the focus from the very beginning. We further re-articulated it in 2015 when we said that any deprived household, as per the socio-economic census, unless and until we make them members of the SHGs, that village shall not be considered saturated. So that focus, so even though the number is 100 million, to my mind, most households that are poor are already covered. There are some in Rajasthan, in Uttar Pradesh, and parts of Madhya Pradesh where we need to expand faster. Political democracy has its advantages as well. Every political party, irrespective of which government, which place, in every state, every chief minister tries to work with women. Because you may realize 2018-19 onwards, every election in India, women voters outnumber men, now even in states like Rajasthan. So women as a constituency, it's a strength and a possible threat. It's a strength because every political party is willing to work with them. The Biju Janata Dal, one of the members of parliament in Lok Sabha, is a member of a self-help group. I expect many more to come this time because every government would like to work with them. The strength is a lot of what they want. They also, Bihar's prohibition is on account of these women. So I think clearly the influence they have in an electoral democracy is a strength because all state governments are willing to do more for them. It's also a threat because naturally elected governments would like them to be their part of their constituency of voters. That's not what they are. So I think that distinction is a fine one and we need to live with it for some time. On the economic benefits that accrue, if I look at total lending to enterprises, the amounts are still modest. But across many states, we have noticed it begins by retiring old debts, moving on to some immediate consumption activities, and thereafter finally to education, health, and enterprise of households. The movement forward on enterprises has been quite positive. It takes a little while. As I said, 6 to 8 years is what Anjani Kochar in her study found. 6 to 8 years is what Pramod Singh in the IRMA study found. And perhaps 6 to 8 also for organizations to mature. But yes, on the formalization track, we have a long way to go. How do we secure resources, credit, working capital credit for such groups is a big challenge in their going to scale. Collateral-free lending is raised to 20 lakhs now. Even that is very modest. But the bigger challenge, how do I ensure working capital to nano enterprises to make them micro and small enterprises? Many of them have come onto the government platforms of e-markets. Many of them are on the GEM portal. Many of them are selling on Amazon and Flipkart. But that is not enough. For the scale to grow, the digital public infrastructure that we've created, from being a payment system, it has to do much more of the credit system. It will need regulation. It will need many more support systems. There are other challenges as well. Andhra shows it very well how an on-lending institution like Srinidhi makes the difference. A couple of other states, we did our initial runs in some states. I think 2 of them are in the process of setting it up now. Clearly, on-lending institutions will help. On-lending institutions which focus on timeliness of loans will help because that is still a big gap. So we have a long way to go, but some elements of the formalization process has begun. The mapping of SHG accounts with individual accounts. Dual authentication in the IT systems for payments at the last mile. A lot of these challenges are getting sorted out as we move forward. But the answer to your question, the glass is half full when it comes to the size of enterprises. We need to move much faster, but I am confident that we'll be there someday, given the fact of electoral democracy and its ways it works. Clearly, women as a constituency will matter for all times, for all parties. A lot of good may happen on account of it. The threat would be that they may be kind of meandered a particular way, but I think there are always ways forward there for small groups to negotiate their space.
Thank you. I think we are continuing to fill the glass, so it will not remain, I think, only half full. One interesting anecdote I heard when I met Mr. Raju, the first director of SERP in AP. He had convened a meeting of several of these women groups. I think it was in Kurnool. And the then PM, Mr. Narasimha Rao, came there. He talked to them. What was supposed to be a 15-minute conversation went on for an hour. It was a public meeting. He was talking, they were responding. And it seemed Mr. Chandrababu Naidu was somewhere there. He looked at the way people responded, almost unified kind of responses in terms of demands, aspirations, everything. He said, that sowed the seeds for Velugu program later on. The point that you make about the electoral democracy influencing public policy and programs is absolutely valid. He gave me 2-3 other anecdotes. Hopefully, maybe some of it is in the book. But I just come back to you again. The point that institutions take time to mature, 6 years, 8 years. We have invested a bit in the village level federations, cluster level federations. Have we done enough in case we have to withdraw after 6 or 8 years. Will they be able to sustain the groups and provide them the umbrella services?
Yeah, thank you. I think I've been saying this at least for 15 years, that if you compare the two models, the NBFC model, which then, small finance bank and universal bank, but in the NBFC model, the loan is given to the individual woman and the transaction of the company is with the individual woman. In the self-help group, the transaction is with the group, right? You cannot scale up the SHG model very easily through finance. What happened with the federations was that when the federations first came in, they were actually not doing so much finance. They were doing capacity building, they were doing group enterprise development, they were doing SHG management, SHG audits, and so on and so forth. They started with doing capacity building and sustaining of SHGs rather than bulk loans. Yeah, except when it came through NGOs. NGOs were willing to fund federations. But then came the question of what should the federation be registered as? Should it be a trust? In entire Maharashtra, it was registered as a trust. I think Mairada Association federations were also registered as NGOs. They were not registered as financial institutions, which means that they still could not pass money. Now, unless you have a large institution that absorbs a large amount of money, you will not have banks interested in you. Maybe through the NRLM, they are giving some money, but trust me, this is 2023, we are working in UP. In our district, the lead bank for the last 4 years has refused to open self-help groups except for 40, we've made some 80 groups in one area. 30 of them have bank accounts, 50 still don't, right? These are lead banks. And essentially saying, if we open a bank account today we'll just take the savings, tomorrow you'll come and say, pay up the, give us a loan. And all the loans that we've given to SHGs have gone, are in default. Who's right? Is the figures of 1.7% right? Or is this the lead bank telling us that, we are not willing to risk any money with SHGs? Are they right? Yeah. I think there is a context to context story behind our large figures, which we really need to look at. And so basically, unless we have an aggregation model for the people's institutions stream of things, the MFIs have gone way beyond the SHG stream has gone. MFIs have gone into digital work, into credit history of individuals, etc., etc. Where have the SHGs gone? To federations? To farmer-producer companies? We have IRMA still making studies and saying not only do SHGs take 7 to 8 years, but federations take 7 to 8 years to stabilize. And if there is no NGO backing the FPO, then that will also just crumble, right? So where are our sustainable institutions which were, dreams of people like Al? They're not, they're there in small pockets. It's not that they are not there. Maybe some 6,000 are there, but we needed 50,000 by this time. So I would say we still have to make huge investments in federations. I'll just add one more thing. I was on a task force for the Maharashtra government some years ago, 5-6 years ago. And the job of the task force was to say, what institutional form should we give federations? Should they become cooperatives or should they become NGOs, right? Or should they become NBFCs? The Maharashtra government was willing to look at that. We deliberated, we talked to Kutumbashri, we talked to the cooperative organizations and everything. I think the task force was closed and they said, no, we are not going to do cooperatives. We are not going to do NBFCs, so let it just stay trusts, right? We haven't broken the problem.
Thank you, Smita. Thank you for that. I think now I have a brief last round question, right? Now we are coming to the close. Actually, we are at close. So, looking to what has happened all along and where we think we are now, what is your top priority? Let us say as we move forward. What are your thoughts as we move forward? What are your top priorities? Your top priority as we move forward for the movement. Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't got much time to look forward to, but first thing I think we should never fall into this trap of thinking that one model is the best, perfect, it's going to last. That's the biggest mistake we are making. And unfortunately, this is in government. You set up an institution, it will always be there. This mistake should not be repeated. And this is a mistake which I think we are repeating. SAGs played a role. If you understand what they were for, they were meant to bring the marginalized into the formal banking system. And it was the banking system what was the major target, not the SAGs. If you read this article, which I have forgotten about, that was precisely what discussion was between Rangarajan, Pyaranayak, myself, all of us. Idea was that SAGs should go. The people should get into the formal system. That was the idea. So, for goodness sake, let us not think that any institution we start is permanent. It will evolve, it will move. There's nothing perfect. And we have to work with this movement. The second thing is, so SAGs, I once said, let the SAGs evolve into a Rotary Club. So no, many of them have, in fact. So that's not the issue. The issue is that what models, there's a big difference between a model which can be replicated and a model that is scalable. Don't miss the two concepts up, please. SCG model can be replicated if it becomes part of the government system, which they've done. As Amarjit just told you, the whole NRLM, the whole thing has replicated the model. But scalability is another issue, and I can give you a talk on this, but I don't want to start. I do not know why we want to scale up everything. Is it necessary to scale up everything? We think, oh, we can't scale up. But I had a good friend of mine who started electric cars in Bangalore years ago. He said, I'm going to make 3,000 cars, that's it. And he was quite happy. Now, the point is, why should everything be scalable? And I don't understand. Why should we some people may say, I just want to do so much. And today, everything is becoming localized. If I go, you see, South India is tremendous. Take Kerala, all the stuff now in our supermarket in my Richmond town, half of it is from Kerala and Tamil Nadu. They're all homemade. Technology, they're using technology. Packing is excellent, this thing is, but they're all homemade, local, Kadmashri, Kudumbashri and all that. I speak to them, there's no, sir, we are earning so much money, we are quite happy. So, I mean, they want to earn more, they can earn more, that's not the issue. Today you take this Golgappa, no, they make, there are thousands of people involved, women involved in making Golgappas, Calcutta. I got a request from somebody who want to start introduce machinery to make 1 million Golgappas. Now you have a point. Are you going to get 1 million people out of a job? Now, you see, these are all issues that you may say you can go to scale, you can go clean, but what about 1 million people? It's up to you, your values. So my point is, let's not make it confusion between scalability, which to me is good, but not all may not want to be, and models that can be replicated. And there is no model that is permanent, please. They will come, they will go, they will emerge again. And the difference between FPOs and SCGs is SCGs are linked up by affinity. FPOs are not necessarily linked up by affinity. They have their own role, and they are very supported by government. They will emerge, they will evolve. But what you say is right. If just at this point of time, the NGOs are not going to support FPOs, they will not prosper. But they have set a pattern, and I think something will evolve from that.
Yeah, Sinhaji, what are your last thoughts?
I'm a born optimist, but not only from that, I have reasons to say what I am saying. 6 things happened in the southern Indian states that explains why their levels of multidimensional poverty are much lower than many other parts of India. The southern Indian states, in particular, starting with the adolescent girls in high schools and higher education, decline in fertility, provision of primary care for maternal and child health in particular, that frees up a woman or an adolescent married woman to attend a vocational course or an ITI or a polytechnic or a nursing school. Fourth, access to vocational courses. Fifth, the formation of groups of women, self-help groups, with a very distinctive identity. The identity question is important because that she was no longer somebody's wife or daughter, she was a woman unto her own. And the formation of SHGs, the women cycling together or taking a public transport together to a college, creates a new identity. And the last but not the least, what Dr. Rangarajan, P.V. Nayak, Aloysius have all gone together to do, provide collateral-free lending up to 10 lakhs. These 6 factors, today, that's a feature across the country. As part of the work for the book that I've just published, The Last Mile, Turning Public Policy Upside Down, I have looked at about 117 gram panchayats in different parts of India, which are not so rich. But wherever these 6 things have happened, there also multidimensional poverty is much lower. Clearly, it's not a same size fit all. That's why the federal principle and evolution of local designs and local strengths is important. Different states have pursued the agenda of economic activity with women differently, which is the way it should be. Because every region, every block, every panchayat has its own issues. The second thing which is very linked to this whole process, decentralization of funds, functions, functionaries through local governments with the countervailing presence of vibrant social capital of women's self-help groups is what is the way forward. That's whatever happened in Kerala shows. The Kudumsri and the panchayats together do make a difference. State after state throws up evidence to this effect. Why I am optimistic, between 2010 and 2015, Orissa, Bihar, UP, Madhya Pradesh, all these states where at the turn of the 21st century, for every 36 women for 64 boys, 38 girls for 62 boys at the secondary exam level. Today, across these states, 2010 to 2015, it's either 48-52 or 49-51. So up to secondary education, even in Bihar, West Bengal, Jharkhand, quality of learning may be poor, but participation of adolescent girls in schooling, that's where hope lies. And if we are able to build on it, work in convergence with decentralized action for human development, clearly we are on a pathway which will take us on a very inclusive India. That journey is possible today because of some of these breakthroughs of social capital at local levels. Thank you.
Okay, I would ditto everything that Amarjeet has said. I would say a couple of things. I think, and I was earlier on a session on empowerment of women through microfinance and microenterprise. What are our problems? Is it that we don't listen to women? I don't think so. We do listen. Maybe we should listen more, but we do listen because they are clients and companies do want to get their perspectives before they give them a loan product. Are the problems with the women that they don't understand? They, of course, understand. They have, yeah. What are the problems? Why is there so much gender equity? It's a question of systems, right? It's a question of patriarchy. Just like you said, women are getting more educated. I think hope lies in the fact that more and more young women are now rejecting marriage. Why should they marry? The moment you marry, you're given all these jobs to do. Show us men, this is how we will change society. Show us men who will cook, who will wash dishes, who will wash vessels and clothes and do household chores and so on. We need to change the systems that we live in, whether they are family systems or they are institutional systems, where financial institutions will actually employ women as leaders, employ women on their boards, change the ways in which they evaluate how they give money and so on. So I think that's where we need to work. Somebody's written a beautiful book called Smashing Patriarchy, and I think that should become an essential read for everyone. But so what am I calling for? I'm calling for a lot of funds to invest, still with NGOs, to bring about this to help empower women. It's not just money alone that will empower women. It will be all these other changes that we are looking for that will empower women. Thank you.
Thank you, Smita. I know you have to be shortly here trying to summarize the conference. And before the rest of the audience leaves, let me thank all of you. Thank this wonderful panel. Maybe they deserve a set of applause for giving wide, varied perspectives and making it richer for us. And also a round of applause for the millions of women out there who make it possible for us to discuss this as an issue.
Thank you so much, wonderful panel, and thank you so much, Mr. Srinivasan. I would like to just add a little bit to this. We would like to, do a special mention for Al. He has traveled all the way to Delhi for this panel. And while we are saying that this is 3 decades of self-help groups, I think it has been actually 4 decades with all the hard work and initial work that Al and his team must have done. As a special gesture, I would like to request Vipin to come on stage and felicitate Al. Just a little bit. And if you can.
So I must also say that Al never lets me down. I know that he's not been traveling these days, but it was my request and he made it really special for us. And this was like a really outstanding session. Just one more minute. When NABARD issued the circular in 1992, I remember 26 February or something like that, I happened to be in NABARD at that time and also a DDM in Udaipur. And we were all tasked with forming SHGs. And we knew how difficult. So for us, it was very foreign. And one of the things that was mandatory if you are going to be promoting SHGs was that you had to travel to Mairada to learn. So I got an opportunity to meet Al actually in sometime in 1992. And during the day, we did the field trips and understood a bit. But I understood a lot more when, over a couple of old monks, in the evening, we had some animated, emotional discussions. So our relationship goes as far back as 1992. And Al, you've always been very, very special to us, to this summit. And this was like a very, very nice, exciting, insightful session. So thank you, everybody in the panel. And where is the shawl?
Once again, our heartfelt thanks to the wonderful panel who have taken us through this discussion. And of course, special thanks going out to the esteemed moderator. I request you all to please kindly join us back in the audience. So, ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We do have a valedictory address and a formal vote of thanks. May I once again invite back on stage Ms. Smita Premchandar, Secretary Sampark, to kindly share with us the summary of findings of the summit. I request you all to please kindly bear with us. Please remain seated. Just a quick summary of the findings of the summit, followed by the vote of thanks.